In this video, we're going to take a look at a blue ink by Akkerman, their #2 Residente Blue. As always, there's timestamps down below in the description so you can skip around, but if you've got the time, I'd appreciate you checking out the entire video. Also down in the description is a link to the blue ink playlist, so if you want to see more blues, you can check that out there. I'm Adam, I'm an ink guy. Let's get into the first writing sample done on 90 GSM Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It is showing some shading, like the K's in Akkerman look darker and it works its way lighter. The extra fine is, in general, the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It is showing some shading where brown goes darker to lighter, jumps goes lighter to darker, 16 seconds to dry. Medium is, in general, lighter than the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, some very light shading. Quick goes darker to darker, brown goes darker to lighter, 29 seconds to dry. Just don't know if that's worth it. The scrubby of the medium shows some color variation, the extra fine not so much, and it shows better in the medium than it did in the extra fine. The scrubby says you can't recover if you smear while you're writing. To have a range of experience with this ink, all of the writing samples are done with a Jinhao 159 with a 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a medium, and a Jinhao X750 with an extra fine. Then, a Retro 51 Tornado with a broad nib was inked up, used for a day, and used to take the notes for this video. Let's look at the second writing sample done on 52 GSM Tomoe River. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It does have some halo where it's a little bit darker, like in the K's of the Akkerman around all of the light writing. So it does have some very nice haloing a majority of its way through. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub. It has no feather, no spread. It has a very constant halo this entire time. No sheen. It shades very well. Quick goes dark to light to dark. And when it's darker, the halo itself is darker as well. 23 seconds to dry. Medium is a little bit lighter than the extra fine. No feather spread. It does halo not as well as the stub did, but when it's darker, like on the B in brown, there's a nice halo there. In the Q in quick, a halo. While it's darker, it gets lighter, no halo. Gets darker, halo's back. 48 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows the halo that we're going to get and got. It shows not a lot of color variation, although it's not too bad up there. And the medium shows none of either of them, although it's better in the writing. The smear test you could not recover if you smeared while you were writing. I agree with Vita. There's a lot to learn by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. A line of ink is put down, and then it's put in the water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see a very brief line at the bottom, and it's pushing, and most of the ink is really, I'm not going to say gathering at the top, but it's darker at the top. Now, the one on the right is allowed to dry for 10 minutes, and it is incredibly different than the one on the left. Most of the ink is in the line at the bottom where it's really bonding with the paper quite quickly, and it's light as it pushes up. But both of these show this to be a true blue. There may be a little bit of resistance here. The next writing sample is done on 80 GSM Rhodia dot pad. We have no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, no halo, no sheen, some shading like the K's in Akkerman, the A in Akkerman, darker. The extra fine is about the same tone, maybe a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, some shading, brown goes darker to lighter. Quick goes darker to lighter to darker, 14 seconds to dry. Medium is darker than the extra fine, about the same tone as the stub, with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does offer some shading. Quick is dark all the way through, but brown goes darker to lighter. Then we're back to dark with Fox, 21 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show some color variation, and there is some in the writing. It's just, The smear test, there is a faint chance that you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. The smear is allowed to dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, it does make the writing look a bit more blown out, but everything is absolutely readable, making it safe in a note-taking situation if you need to go back and highlight. Now, water is reactivating and lifting most of this ink. You do see some of the white of the paper coming through, but it's not removing it. Pen Flush does everything that water does and nothing more, but it only took water to get this out of my pen. And the 1/3 bleach solution, it's discoloring the paper while it completely removes it. The next writing sample is done on monokaki paper. We have no bleeding, some minor ghosting, very minor. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen. It offers some shading as it goes darker to lighter. The extra fine is about the same tone as the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen. It shades fairly decently. Brown goes darker to lighter. Fox is a very dark word. Over is very light. 12 seconds to dry. Medium is the darkest tone on the page with no feather spread, halo sheen. It does show some shading. Lazy is very dark compared to everything around it. Brown goes dark to light. 17 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both do show a little bit of haloing, but I'm not seeing it here. They show some color variation, and we do get it. And the smear test, I do not think you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average viscosity was 2.5, and the realm of normal was 2.1 to 2.9. Akkerman's Residente Blauw has a viscosity of 3.43, making this a very dry ink. If you're interested in how the viscosity tests and all that's done, then down in the description is a link to that video. Let's take a look at the next writing sample done on Moji paper. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, light shading. It goes from a little darker to a little lighter. The extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, little bits of shading. Quick is a little darker to lighter to darker. Brown is darker to lighter. 11 seconds to dry. Medium is by far the darkest tone on the page with no feather spread, halo sheen, and no shade. 16 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine shows some color variation, which we got. The medium showed no color variation, we didn't get. The medium also shows halo, which we did not get. The smear, I believe you could recover if you smeared while you were writing. For the inks tested, the average dry time was 17 seconds, and the realm of normal was 13 to 21 seconds. Akkerman's number 2 Residente Blauw has an average dry time of 25 seconds, meaning it takes a bit longer than normal to dry. The last writing sample is done on moleskin paper. Now there is it's bleeding in. It's nowhere near bleeding through in the extra fine. It's bleeding much deeper into the page on the medium. Again, not touching the page underneath. So in that, it's very good news for a pocket-sized notebook. If you were using the extra fine, you could use the back of the page. I don't think you could use the back of the page with the medium. The medium has a ton of feathering all over it, tiny feathering all there all the time. No spread, halo sheen, no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the medium. It has tiny feathering the entire way through. It's very consistent tiny feathering. No spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 4 seconds to dry. Scrubby shows no color variation. We're not getting it. In the smear test, you could not recover it if you smeared while you were writing. But I don't see this as horrible considering the paper. Instead of finding inks that look like Akkerman Residente Blauw, I'd prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went with a brown ink by KWZ, their Iron Gall Light Aztec Gold. Now, if you'd prefer a different complement color, then down in the description are links to those different color playlists. What do I think of Akkerman's Residente Blauw? In the writing samples, it was just too light. You can see it goes down much darker than it dries. I experienced a bit of hard starting if the pen had some time in the air while not writing. But it didn't do it here. I tried to give it a second and see if it would happen. So what nib and pen will give the best writing experience with this ink? If you like light blues, then a medium flow, medium, or really any nib is going to do really good. It's going to put down a very pleasant tone that is a light blue. But I didn't care for how light it was. So for me, I would go with a very wet medium or a very wet fine to really darken it up some. I hope you got something out of this video, and in the next video, we're going to take a look at Noodler's Rabble Red.